Thanks for joining me, Shaina.
Thanks so much for having me.
I feel like I've kind of like known you. You've kind of been on the peripheral of my life for so long, like whether it's workouts and like then jumping into other fitness type stuff and through my extended friend group. So yeah, I'm really excited to connect with you today.
Exactly. Me too.
Yeah. So I thought maybe we would just start with your professional career start. So essentially, from what I understand, you were a kinesiology undergrad. You're going through your undergrad while playing basketball for the Huskies.
You bet.
And then moved into policing. So tell me about that.
Yes. So I grew up in Saskatoon. I've lived here the majority of my life. So I was really involved in community sports and different things. And moving into playing for the Husky basketball team was a massive undertaking and goal of mine. And just, I think through sport and being involved, it led me to an attraction to kinesiology. I was just interested in how the body moves, how we heal, and just finding out a little bit more about how I can transfer that into peak performance and what that looks like. So I took on that kinesiology undergrad without any real goal, an end goal, I should say. It just kind of led to my path. It kind of happened by accident that the Saskatoon Police Service showed up at a Husky kind of a recruiting night. They hosted for all athletes across campus. And that was kind of my introduction to, okay, wait a minute, what does this look like in terms of a career where literally the slogan is never the same day twice? And that kind of hit home for me. It related to sport. It related to training and preparing ourselves for the unknown, for the moments of quick decision making, relying on a team atmosphere, just showing up and making a difference and preparing yourself to do so. So it hit home. And like from that moment forward, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to finish my degree and I'm going to apply to policing.
In that moment, when you're pursuing or thinking about policing as an option, did it ever cross your mind or did you ever have any roadblocks about like, well, I'm not seeing a lot of women doing this particular type of work? Was that ever a thought or was it no, like this is my thing, this makes sense, there's alignment here, I'm just going to jump in?
I've always been more of I've always had a mindset that's more of like, oh, well, if there's not, I'll be the first. It's just one of those things. So it was definitely not a roadblock for me. It was more of a challenge.
Love that.
So that's kind of how I looked at it. But no, there wasn't a lot of women and there wasn't a lot of indigenous women. In fact, I didn't know or see any. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you get into policing.
Yep.
And you start with patrol. Does everybody start with patrol?
So everybody starts with patrol. It's kind of like the landing spot for everybody that's new. It exposes you to everything. You go to police college in Regina. We have a provincial police college for all municipal services across Saskatchewan. So everyone kind of goes together. And then you go back to your respective agencies and everyone starts in patrol. So I spent 4 or 5 years in patrol. You do 6 months of training and then you're on your own during days and you partner up at night. Okay. And, it was an experience. There's some amazing aspects of it and there's a lot of trauma. And I think that for me, that was one of the biggest, not shocks. I want to say I expected levels of it, but I don't think I anticipated what it would actually be like.
Yeah. What it actually feels like the first time you see something that just doesn't feel humane and shakes you to your core.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like living in a real life movie. If I can compare it to anything, like you're watching it and you're like, this isn't even real. You almost feel like you're playing a role.
Right.
It's so out of the ordinary of what we experience.
Yeah. And very quickly you felt that way. Like it's pretty much like, I guess you don't do many shifts without having something.
No, that's right. Yeah. People are never phoning the police when they're having a great day. So in patrol, being responsive, you're attending to significant trauma, challenge, all of those things.
Right. Mm-hmm. But decided that this was still your thing.
Totally.
Regardless.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, having the capacity to show up in people's time of need relates back to, I'm going to say most people's innate desire to become a police officer in the first place. It's to help, it's to make a difference, it's to improve circumstances. And a lot of the times that's not what we end up doing, but it's one of the driving factors for sure.
Right. So you did patrol for 5 years, correct?
Yeah.
And then you moved into another role.
You bet. I moved into being a school resource officer. So that transition was specific to wanting that follow-up, wanting that investment in people, and wanting to be able to see them through. So as a school resource officer, I had 15-ish schools assigned to me. And essentially our role is somewhat responsive still when there's issues at schools or concerns, you're called. But a large aspect of it is that repetitive engagement. It's returning, it's seeing kids through processes, it's talking with families and people in the community and seeing that growth and that change. And I knew after being a part of that I could never be without it. Right. That was where I fit best. That's where I excelled. And I didn't want to return to that Band-Aid kind of tornado.
Putting out fires versus maybe having a bit of an impact,
totally.
Right? And I'd imagine kids are a little bit more malleable, right? Kids are still trying to figure out who they are, what they're doing, what their coping mechanisms are in life. And if you give them another avenue to deal with their trauma or their emotions, maybe they don't end up as a police patrol call.
And you know what? It's challenging because it's not measurable. And I think in so many of our organizations, when something's not measurable, we don't give value to it.
Right.
And that's where it for me, I had to assign that value to, I don't know how many kids changed their life path. I don't know if I inspired them in actions or words, but I can only monitor my own behavior and actions and hope that it leaves some form of legacy. And I relate this back. My mom grew up in foster care. And one of the times that she was being transported to another foster home, she had a worker traveling with her. And that worker kind of was giving her a birds and the bees talk. And she was very resistant. She was a young teenager and kind of like, oh my goodness, like most kids would be to that kind of a conversation, especially with somebody not familiar to you.
Right.
And she kind of went through the whole birds and the bees action. But what resonated with my mom was simply that this social worker said to her, when you get to university, that would be a good time to wait to engage with a partner or something like that. And my mom didn't care about like the actual sexual portion of that. For her, she was like, somebody thinks I can go to university. And that hit home.
Yeah.
She never forgot that.
Yeah.
And she lived out into that. So I'm very cognizant about how the littlest things that we can say in our actions and behaviors to others could significantly impact them.
Shaina, one sentence that she remembered.
Totally.
Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that age, that is what it is. It's those little moments, those little sentences when someone recognizes you as something other than a little kid. And
Yeah. And that's one of those immeasurable outcomes. That social worker has no idea the inspiration that they imposed, but wow.
Yeah. Those malleable little minds.
Totally.
Yeah. Very cool. So you did that so you worked in the school system. So it sounds like you're responding to calls, but you're also just there building relationships.
Totally.
Being proactive, kind of getting ahead of it, right?
Doing presentations, reading to kids, supporting their events, showing up in different ways and capacities that help bridge the gap between who police officers are and being kind of leaders in the community and people that we can trust and go to.
Yeah. More receptive at that age, I'd imagine,
for the most part. Yeah. There's also ingrained challenges in family dynamics and stuff versus trust and belief in the police. So you're kind of trying to change a narrative that's been ingrained in some families. So it was challenging still. Right. But definitely lots of opportunity and excitement.
Okay. So 10 years of police work.
Yeah.
And then what?
Well, then I realized that I was going to be heading back into patrol because there's a beauty in policing that as a constable, every 5 years, you can apply for a preferred position. And then when that position is done, despite how great you are in the role or how much you love it, you have to leave. So there's kind of a 3 to 5 year window in all of those preferred positions. So I was coming to an end of my school resource time and you can't go back into the same role. So I knew that community side for me was ending and I didn't want it to. I knew that I had to do something that would allow me to engage in the community kind of different than what my uniform would allow. Right. I wanted to do and be more than just that responsive police officer.
Right.
So I didn't know what that looked like. I never went to school for business. I was not involved in any capacity. My mom was briefly a small business owner. So I had a little bit of insight and experience. She owned like a tanning salon way back in the day.
Okay.
And yeah, it kind of came together really at a time where everything just fell in line. And, we talk about like light bulb moments or like when the stars align with things. And I feel like it truly did in this circumstance.
Right.
I was in the point of kind of discussing what I could do, and equally was approached by a family friend that was teaching spin classes in Calgary. And she kind of said, hey, I know that you go to the kind of big box gyms and do these Ryde classes or spin classes, and come out to Calgary and you need to see what it's like in this boutique industry. And it was something that Saskatoon didn't have. I feel like we've had yoga studios and things like that have existed for a long time, right? Independent or kind of chains.
Yeah.
But we had nothing beyond that. There was our big like Motion,
Right.
Good Life, big box places, and there were yoga studios. And that was it.
And sorry, what year is this, Shaina? Just so I have
Okay, so this is like early 2016, late 2015 that my wheels were turning.
And this was the 10-year mark of policing. I feel like I'm not really sure where this is headed because there's this misalignment.
Yeah.
There's this space in this market. You're kind of open, and this family friend reaches out to you and says, hey, you got to come experience this thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I just kind of left it open. I thought, okay, let's just go inquire. Let's just see what it's like, experience it. And we took 2 trips to Calgary. We went to Calgary and went to a few different studios and just kind of took note of the people, the community, the feeling.
And at this point, like, so when you're going out there on these 2 trips, were you thinking like, oh, this might be a business or something I can bring to Saskatoon? Or was this just curiosity?
It was curiosity at that time because I didn't know if it aligned with me, and that was really important. So I had to just kind of let everything go and experience it and expose myself to it before I even considered it.
Right.
So essentially I went, challenged the heck out of myself. And I ended up going to her class, which was part of the reason why I went. And
this family friend.
Yes, her name's Kelly. So I went to her class, and in her class, she told me ahead of time, she's like, so I don't know if you know who this is, but also registered in the same class that you're coming to is Sheldon Kennedy. And so I knew completely who Sheldon Kennedy was. I worked with lots of kids working in schools at the time who are victims of childhood sexual abuse, of challenging circumstances. And Sheldon Kennedy is an incredible advocate for victims, for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. He's written a book. He created the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Center in Calgary, and he was just fundraising and starting that project at this time.
So maybe just for anybody who doesn't know who Sheldon Kennedy is.
Yeah. So he is a former hockey player. He played for the Swift Current Broncos at the time when they experienced a bus crash prior to, the tragedy that occurred in Humboldt. And he disclosed later that he had experienced abuse by the hands of his coach. So he wrote a book on that and has since become an incredible advocate. So knowing that story and having that background and knowing that he was creating this center in Calgary where the police officers would work out of that are investigating these crimes, it was like so many things were aligning for me.
Right.
So I sat in that room, and anyone that's been to a class knows that the lights kind of can go up or down. And so in a dark room, in the moment, it's like it all came full circle for me. I just sat there and I sobbed. I cried and cried and cried. My husband was like, what is going on? Like, we're literally just spinning. This is nothing. Doesn't like kind of grasp the entire concept that was like functioning for me.
Right.
And so I just saw Sheldon and I'm like, oh, wow, he needs this place as part of his journey, as his center, as his healing. And yet this community, all these other people in the room are supporting what he's doing. And they're moving forward to help fundraise. They're doing these karma classes or like Ride for Change type of things where they're fundraising and donating to this cause.
Right.
And then there's my friend Kelly, who I'm like, wow, you're a shining star on a stage leading people through these journeys. And there's people in the class like me sobbing their eyes out. There's people like Sheldon putting their head down and healing in their own ways. And there's other people just spinning like my husband.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was just like, holy light bulb. And so I don't know if everyone has experienced that light bulb in terms of starting a business or going down that process, but it was incredibly significant for me.
Yeah. So all of a sudden you're realizing this isn't just a boutique fitness class. Yeah. There's this element of people showing up, a community coming together for a shared cause or purpose.
Yes.
And then also just the release.
Yes.
Like as someone who sat in some of your classes, totally. Shaina, and it's whether it's like, you know, even early days of the pandemic, or it's dealing with loss, or just having a really rough week at work or a rough month at work or event or whatever it is, like sitting there for 50 minutes and physically exerting yourself with all of these people that are like, the energy in there is just like so positive, right? So for anybody who hasn't experienced that, like it's incredible. Like it's just, totally. It's kind of like the feeling that a lot of people experience at like marathons or races, right? Yes. Everybody's at the start line together. Yes. The energy's high. Everybody's going to exert themselves. And everybody's just so supportive of the process to get there and to be there, right?
Absolutely.
So,
everyone's cheering for you. And the beauty of it is it's exactly what you need it to be every single time you show up.
Yeah.
You know, whether it is a need to release, to, you know, to cry, to put your head down, to be quiet, or maybe it's an opportunity to kind of exert the energy you're holding and feeling a little stir crazy or whatever it might be. It is exactly what you need it to be. And we have this thing that we always talk about, how this bike that doesn't move has taken us further than we ever thought possible. And so it's just kind of an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing, just not to beat a dead horse, but it's so accessible for people who are so I have a friend who never worked out, never played sports, didn't do her thing, had her second baby, and realized like, I need to carve out time for myself, and started showing up to Ryde classes. Somebody introduced her to it, and that became her thing. So that was her entrance into like fitness and wellness and moving her body, was Ryde, because it's so accessible.
Yeah, it's so and it's so inclusive. I mean, the reality is we're all in charge of our own dials. Yeah. You can stand, you can sit, you can take a track off. You do you in the classes. You know, the instructor is just a guide. And at the same time, it has that ability, you know, me with that significant knee injury, it's a non-impact exercise. So you can get that cardio aspect without the pounding that happens with runners or anything like that, you know?
Right. Or the skill required to swim.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. Yeah. So did you ever get a chance to tell Sheldon Kennedy that he was a big
He
part?
has been told, yes.
Ah, okay.
And I actually was gifted like a signed copy of his book from it. I didn't speak to him in person, but through our mutual circles. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So you have this amazing Ryde class, this out-of-body experience, and you decide that this is something you want to create in Saskatoon.
Yeah.
What does that journey look like?
Wow. It was like blank paper in front of me. Oh my gosh. Like, where do I start? Yeah. How do I do this? What does it look like to create a business plan? Where do I get money from? My husband and I have 5 kids between the two of us, and they were little at this time. So, you know, tied up in all of their activities and working a full-time job, and just where does this come from? What's the capacity to actually invest the time, energy, finances required to develop something from scratch? Right. It's immense. And I honestly think it's kind of the entrepreneurs are some of the most incredible people I know. And that's what it comes from, because I think there's a lot of brilliant people that have these incredible ideas in front of them. But to go from that blank piece of paper to an established business in whatever capacity that looks like takes grit.
That's
you know,
the thing. Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And not everyone's willing to take that leap.
Yeah.
So finding out where I could go, how to develop a business plan, who my support network is, how I could even partner with somebody or do something that would allow me to make this possible. I knew that I couldn't leave my career. I didn't want to. And I also knew that I couldn't also run a business full-time alone.
Right.
So it kind of lent me to walk with who could do this with me and what does that look like. And
so you're talking like a partner. I need a business partner.
I needed somebody to be my other half.
Right.
And it ended up working amazing. So my business partner at Ryde, her name's Brady Musto, and I met her in grade 9. Literally the first day of grade 9, Brady and I have been friends ever since. And, I caution everyone about going into business with family, friends. It doesn't matter how close you are. Business can significantly impact people's relationships because it's hard.
Right.
So, I definitely don't say this is an easy thing, and I encourage it. And it is a very challenging decision. And I feel very blessed to be where I'm at in that partnership.
What was it about Brady specifically? Because I'm sure you had a list of people in your mind that you kind of ran through.
Yeah.
And what was it? Was it a skill set? Was it your connection with her? Was it I'm just curious as to what that was for you.
Great question. Brady is just somebody that was never afraid to take a leap. So she graduated high school, moved on her own to go dance in Tokyo, left her family and her support system, and was just always somebody that was kind of marching to the beat of her own drum, making a life for herself, and always digging to establish her own goals and her own sense of self. So I admired so much about her. Just me being so close to my family, staying in Saskatoon. I don't know if I ever honestly could have moved away or would have wanted to, but I admired people that were willing to just really go and explore, not just traveling, actually leaving home, moving to another continent, and, just that kind of stuff. That's intense. Yeah. And you know what? We've gone through challenges throughout, but I remain that invested in her as my partner to this day. So it was absolutely a great decision.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you start this, so you got your partner, and now you got to figure all the rest of it out, right? Like what were some of it sounds like everything was a bit of a challenge because it's new and different, and it's also a new business at that time to Saskatoon. But as your journey throughout it, whether it's simple things like getting bank accounts and a business license and all these types of things, or some of the bigger things like coming up with the brand and the marketing, building the team. Like as you're kind of working through that whole process of building this business, what were kind of some of the big challenges and lessons that came out of it, if any come to mind for you?
So one is just, like I said, that blank paper. Where do I start? Wow. How do I access this, and who can guide me in this process? I developed a business plan, a skeleton version on my own with no training or experience or guidance. Okay. I pitched banks along with my husband. Brady still lived overseas at the time. And I got told no over and over and over because there's no market comparisons. This doesn't exist here. My numbers are figures of our imagination. And, quite frankly, they kind of said, this isn't really a proven thing. You're not an entrepreneur. You don't have significant financial investments. All of these things pointed to risk.
Lots of risk.
Yeah. And I knew that I was taking a big risk. Right. And it's hard to convince somebody that, oh, no. My passion and my dedication to this will make it successful. Yeah. But, banks don't take promises. So
no, and it's such a measure of character because I also don't know any entrepreneurs that start off and think like, I'm going to fail. But like, to your point, you can sometimes see that the grit's there and the commitment is there, or it's not. And banks can't measure that. And there's no column that says this person's has a lot of integrity and I believe in them, right? But that is what it comes down to.
And you know what? I did have the luxury that Brady and I both have full-time other careers. We weren't creating a business to be self-sustaining and for it to make or create our income and lives for us. Right. We were creating a business to reinvest in community, and that allowed us a little bit more room for what we could continue to create and invest. And I understand that not everybody has that, that luxury going forward. And then, it ended up kind of happening that I went to Women Entrepreneurs, and that's where things landed for me.
That's the local association here in Saskatoon, WSK?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And The big difference there was I wasn't submitting numbers and plans that would then be sent to somebody in Toronto sitting at a desk somewhere who plug it into a computer and then it's a generated like yes, no, whatever that looks like.
Right.
It was sitting in front of humans and sharing that grit and passion and articulating every aspect of my business to a person that's evaluating the capacity.
Right.
And that's what made the difference. So we ended up securing our first loan and oh my goodness, like the pucker of signing a loan and signing a location and doing those things. Wow, was that scary.
Yeah.
People have no idea.
And exhilarating?
So many things.
Yeah, all the things.
Yeah. And it's just, it's incredible pressure. I remember just walking through this like open space on Broadway being like, oh my goodness, this is intense. Like, I can't believe it came to this point and where we're at. And so we were designing our studio. We were preparing to make it public, which was another huge hump, like actually putting it out into the universe that this is happening.
Right.
And will people come? Right? Like at the end of the day, it's your customers, your clients, whatever. What is going to make them come and try something that's completely new to this market and to this place in Saskatoon? And that is scary.
So when you and Brady, because that is the big thing, right? Like any business has to add value.
Yes.
But sometimes it's hard to prove that you can add value because you got to get people to try the product or show up and whatever. So what was your and Brady's thought process? Is like, how are we going to get people to show up?
Yeah. We opened up and had a completely free weekend. We welcomed everyone through our doors, no charge. We just wanted full classes and we wanted our instructors to be able to have done the training, completed all of it, get up there and have a room of people to create the energy that needed to be in the space. If you're just teaching and you're teaching to two people because you're building a brand and building a business, that doesn't feel great. You don't feel good that no one's really choosing you or coming to this opportunity. And so we just wanted to start right off the bat. We're going to make it good so that these people in these first few days of being open have dynamic, full classes and it feels good and the energy's there. So when they leave, we know they'll want to come back.
Yeah, because they felt what this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had that, and then we maintained our first ride free for a long time because it was one of those things that we just wanted people to walk through our doors and give us an opportunity, give us a chance to make an impact for you. And then the rest was up to us.
And what was it word of mouth? Like what early days, what caused your business to grow? Was it a social media presence? Was it word of mouth? Like, where do you feel like you got the most amount of support to just get those people through the door? We have spent nearly nothing on advertising, which marketing people and advertising are like, oh, don't say that out loud. But that's the reality, is that we knew that we were experiential. So ultimately our greatest form of advertising would be word of mouth. It would be people sharing their experience, becoming like that water cooler talk, becoming whatever it looks like when they went back into their families, friend groups, businesses, saying like, have you been to Ryde yet? Wow, this is this new thing to Saskatoon. It's a new concept. It's not like anything we have here. And we needed to have that conversation take place. So that was our huge takeaway, that we needed to create an experience that people would talk about. And, we followed that up with social media. We had a presence on Instagram. We still do things like that. And but we never really invested in all the different things possible. We don't have Twitter. I don't even have Snapchat for myself. Right. We just never really moved beyond kind of Facebook, Instagram. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, what was the demographic that came early days? And is that still the same demographic now, almost 8 years later?
Yeah. It's hard to say. It was a little bit of everything, a little bit of everyone, and kind of everything all thrown into one, which is, it's not the best, kind of marketing tactic to be like, oh, we apply to everyone. No, we should really define who we're trying to appeal to, right? Like that, you should have a target market. That's the general principles behind business. But at the end of the day, despite knowing that, we cater a little more to females, we have kind of a mid demographic age range, kind of, 25 to 35 is primarily who we're seeing a lot of. That doesn't hold to, we've had riders that are 73 years old. We have riders younger and younger asking to come. We have club teams that ask to book in private rides and do things. So, despite having a majority of a dynamic of people, everybody comes. It's dependent on what you're seeking and where you are in your life and what you're looking for goal wise. And it's definitely not exclusive.
Not exclusive. Okay. So I'm hearing a good business partner, an association, or really somebody who can be a partner that is going to fund this thing versus, really just somebody who's measuring risk, which I think is a lot more available today than it was maybe in 2016.
Absolutely.
And then what other people or professionals do you kind of need in your corner to kind of get through this process of getting into entrepreneurship from having the idea to conception, execution, I call it.
Yep. So the beauty of WESC for us is they helped me redefine my entire business plan. They actually went through with support. This is how we do this. This is what it's going to look like when you develop profit and loss statements. This is what it's going to look like, without a financial background or a marketing background, or they kind of are like the one-stop shop for entrepreneurs. And that, like you said, that isn't necessarily something that was as widely available. So not only are they deciding risk for their loans, but they are whole self preparing these entrepreneurs for a world of business
to be successful.
So it kind of started there for me, just kind of re-envisioning the process through the support systems that they had. Now, in terms of actually opening a business, whether it is a brick and mortar, you need to be, as the entrepreneur, you need to be the best damn toilet cleaner. You need to be the best mopper. You need to know all the best products. And you also need to be the best CEO. It's one of those things where, and I'll talk about all the professionals that I cherish and love. However, that needs to be a stepped process. As the entrepreneur and CEO, you need to know every aspect of your own business. So whether that's starting out doing your own marketing, even if it is working with a brand agency or doing some of that kind of brand identification and growth with them, with support, it still means understanding the metrics yourself, what you're putting out, what aligns with your brand. And that starts with you identifying that mission, vision, values, and how to put that into everything. Okay, so I want, clean products. I want, green friendly processes, products. What does this look like? Kind of that people, planet, profit, triple bottom line aspect of everything, right? I want my brand to reflect who we are. I want it to showcase all the different body types and humans that are in this space that are welcome. We're not a brand that's just showing, just sports bras and things and looking to fit a certain mold. That's not who we are. So we will never advertise that way. And just knowing all of those kind of steps in your process yourself, doing the books, doing the payroll, doing, the front desk work, become the expert in every role before you hand it off. Because as soon as you're going to have expectations of others, you damn well better know how to do it yourself best.
And so really you're your best business partner.
Yeah.
You're your best resource, or your professional is the owner itself. Yeah.
Right. And you know what? Now at this point, 8 years later, we sure as heck do have bookkeepers and an accountant, and we have our lawyers, and I have someone else doing social media, and I have someone else hiring our front desk staff and our karma staff. And we all have different roles, but we've offloaded so many of those things after becoming those experts ourselves. And now that allows us to be a little more comfortable in our roles and in more of a leadership capacity.
Right. And understanding that the brand is still going to have its authenticity.
Yeah.
The integrity is going to be intact.
Absolutely.
Of Ryde YXC.
Yeah, because you've been a part of it all along.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very cool. So going back to 2016, and you're this you're this entrepreneur looking up at this mountain, not even really sure what it's going to be like. What advice would you give to a young person or anybody really who's standing there and saying like, hey, I think I have an idea and I want to get this, I want to execute on this business. Like what advice would you give them?
What do you need?
Yeah.
Who do you need? Outline it. It has to be so clear.
Yeah.
Who's your support system? Who's going to help talk you through it? And sometimes your support system isn't who you think it's going to be. Like I had hard conversations with family. They're like, what? You're nuts. You already have 5 kids and a career that pays you really well. And how could you possibly want to invest in this kind of risk?
Right.
And, that's a legitimate family concern and question. So sometimes you have to align yourself with like-minded people in different circles than you think.
Right.
So just kind of finding that support system in anything that we do, a support system is so critical in our success. So looking who that might be and seeking them. It might not be somebody you even know right now. So whether that's investing in a business coach or somebody that holds you accountable, that believes in you and that has the skill set to kind of give you that whole self, much like Wes did for me, it's critical. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, sometimes people in our positions suffer from a bit of that imposter syndrome, that fear of failure, or the fear that people are going to discover that, oh my gosh, we're not actually capable. And I have struggled with that over and over and over. It's one of those things that, okay, I'm going to open a spin studio and, oh wait, no, I don't have a business background. Oh wait, I've never taught a spin class. Oh wait, I've never done all of these things, but I promise you I'll be really good. It doesn't really fly like that.
Right.
So it was one of those things that I had to convince myself too, that I can do this. I will learn it along with others and I will excel in it. And in the process, we will kind of become who we intended to be.
Yeah. It's rephrasing that imposter syndrome as an opportunity to learn and grow or develop a new skill or something.
And it's a challenging self-narrative and it's an ongoing process for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just hearing about your path and some of the questions or the challenges or the roadblocks that you came across, because I'm sure you're able to sit here 8 years later in hindsight and know that it all worked out very beautifully and you have this successful business.
Yeah.
But I'm sure in that moment that you get the second rejection from the bank, maybe not the first, but the second and the third, like that's going to get to you, right? And that does make you question whether you're on the right path. So I think just anybody hearing your story and how it was as clunky as it was along the way will be kind of reaffirmed and have that kind of confidence to keep going.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story about, policing to entrepreneurship and all the struggles and the really beautiful parts along the way.
My pleasure.